this video series. So here is the very first video, and in this video I will speak about type and members. When you go into reflection classes or watch reflection videos, you see they speak time and time about get type, member info, blah blah blah, and you would get confused. Sometimes you even get errors that make you confused. For example, Sean had something like this. He had a class called iWall, and it was inheriting from mono behavior. Then inside that, he had a public interface iWall. Okay, and right now you see it's red. Yeah. If I take a look at output, well, not here. Actually, if I go back to Unity, you will see that Unity yells at me. Well, let's make it much easier. Yeah, reload all. Yes. Go to hell. Let's remove namespace for time being. I will speak about namespaces later, but this was the system that Sean was developing. A class, an interface inside the class with the same name. Okay? Now, when you go back into Unity, you get this error. iWall member names cannot be the same as their enclosing type. If you don't know what is the type or what is the member, then you may not understand what is going on here. iWall. Well, here is the thing. If you have a class, okay, it's a type. If you have an interface, it's a type. Here, I have a type that is called iWall because I'm defining the class. Then inside that class, I have something. Anything that sits inside a type, anything in here, is called member. So for example, field example, that is a field, don't forget, because you see I have a field, okay? This is a member. This is how a property works. It has a getter, it has a setter. It may not have a get, it may have only a set, or it may only have a get and no set. Any one of these can become protected, private, blah, blah, blah. But long story short, this is the definition of a property. And of course, this is a definition for a method. How can you tell this is a method and this is a property? Is the lack of these parentheses in here. So we have a field, we have a property, we have methods. And all of these are members. So members can be fields, can be properties, can be methods, or they can even be interfaces. They can be anything that C# accepts as a type. But here's the thing. When I'm defining an interface inside a class, what I'm doing is that I'm defining a member inside a type. You may yell at me, didn't you say interface is a type? If it was sitting outside of this class, then yes. I was defining a type here, I was defining a type here. But when I put it inside the class, then suddenly everything's changing. I'm defining a type, correct, but that type at the same time is a member of another type. That is why when you come back to Unity, you see it is called member now. This member is referring to this one. actually this part, okay, this one. And the type is referring to this part. So what it says that, hey, you have a member inside a type, but their names, as you see, are the same. So that eyewall dot eyewall that you would say, the first eyewall was this, the second eyewall was that. So it says eyewall dot eyewall. This is the class, this is the interface in the class, and it says that, hey, they can't have the same name. But this is a very bad example. Actually, it's I think no sane C# programmer would put an interface inside the class. I will talk about what are interfaces and what are classes inside another video. I tend to keep these example videos and these concepts short, but each one of them should deal with you know, a single concept, and one of those is this: never put the word I in the name of a class as a single. Well, of course, if I had something that like internal wall, that was okay. But if you put only I and then a name, well, it's practiced for definition of interfaces. So whenever I would see, for example, here, if I see something like public IWall, wall, and by the way, this is a field, okay, because you don't see parentheses, so it's not member, it's not a method. You don't see curly braces like this with a get or set, so it's not property, it's not member, it's it's not property, it's not method, so it's a field. Okay? So whenever I see something like this, I would assume that IWall is an interface. And I would get confused because interfaces are not being used like this. For example, if I say public I interface, interfaces, well, this is correct way. You see that it's not yelling at me that, hey, interface is an interface. And why are you defining a field by the interface type? Actually, it's a very well used concept. I will come to this later. But, you know, so how can I define, how can I tell that this is not interface and this is the class? Well, the only thing that is helping me right now is Visual Studio's color coding, and I wisely changed the color between interface and wall, so I know that this is a class because of its color. But if I would see it here, for example, where is my Notepad++ icon? Notepad++. If I see it here, and if I say this language is indeed C++, then you don't know anything. Which one is interface? Which one is class? Well, I can say I interface is interface because, no, actually I can't. It can be a class, you know, because monobehavior, for example, is a class. So there is no definition here that guides me toward being interface or wall. Professionals would assume that IWall is an interface because it has I plus wall. And I plus something almost always is used for defining interfaces. Okay? So if I wanted to change this guy properly, I would call it wall. Because I'm using ReSharper, it changed the name here too. So now if I see something like this, I would know that, okay, wall should be some sort of Uh, I don't know. But one thing is sure, it's not interface. Well, can here be a class or can be a structure, and I will talk about the structures later. But I'm sure about one thing. Wall is not interface because professionals always use I plus something for interface. And because it doesn't have that, I know that, okay, this is not interface, but this is an interface because it has I plus interface. If this interface was whatever, doesn't matter, but because I'm seeing the I word in front, I would say, okay, this is an interface. So stick to these naming conventions because if anyone wants to take a look at your code, then they would know what's going on. Okay, let me see if I can find it. Yep. Okay, so for example, this is the forum post that I was speaking with Sean, and I saw this. And for a minimum second, I thought, okay, I mean, I wasn't reading carefully first, so I said, okay, I will. Then coming down, and okay, wall handler, why is he using I? Oh, wait, what is this? Ah, wait, iwall.iwall? That doesn't make sense. Then I came up, because first I saw this and I said, okay, he's using the interface. But when I saw that error, I came up and read and see, oh, class, iwall, money behavior, then an interface in it. Sean! And yeah. So never use I plus the name as the name for classes. Use it for interfaces. Also, never define interfaces as members of classes. Interfaces should always be a type, so keep them outside of any class and on a separate file. I will come back to interfaces, inheritance, polymorphism, all of those things. But today I wanted to talk about types and members, So a field, a property, now it's a field, and a method. These are members, but when the topmost, if you don't have a namespace, by the way, when you are using class, or you can say struct, also it will yell at you because structs cannot inherit from classes, but, well, so class, struct, interface, these are the mostly used type definitions. Okay? So whenever you are using those words, class, not calls, class, interface, or struct, or even enum, try to keep them outside of your classes. Enums are a bit special, you can use them, but yeah, the idea here is whenever you are using one of these three words, class, interface, and struct, remember that most of the time you want to define a new type. So keep them on a separate file and don't put them inside another type. So you should avoid something like this. Public struct that. Okay? You see that it won't yell at you. There is no errors doing this. And even if I come back to Unity, you see no errors anywhere. So this is correct. This is not a bug, but it's a very bad practice because I'm defining a structure restricted to this type. And that is bad. Okay? So, well, it has its own usages, don't take me wrong, but normally you don't want to do that. especially on monobehavior classes. Well, if I was doing this and it was not a monobehavior, it was a simple class, yeah, that class maybe want to have a structure that is hard-coded for this type of class. But monobehavior structures inside monobehaviors, no, certainly no. So, yeah, that's the type and members definition. So, by the way, if you have the struct here, for example, if I have public struct, blah, and even if I have public interface, blah 2, and yeah, I blah 2, these work, okay? And here I'm defining a type inside another type. So by itself, it would be a type. But because it's inside another type, this type is a member of this type. It's getting confusing, isn't it? Yeah. So a type can have members only. Members can be field, property, method, or another type. Okay? So if you have a type inside another type, this child type is a member of this top type. Okay? As we have here. We have a top type. We have types as children of it. So these types will become a member of this type. And here is the thing. If you have a type that has members, here's a rule for you. Member names cannot be the same as parent type. And that was the error that Sean was getting. He had something that here for the example would be type example. Here is a member with the same name as the parent type, but Unity will refer it as enclosing type. Okay? It doesn't have the, well, it's not using the English language as we are using here, but this guy, this type example here, okay? So here, look at me. Okay. Here, the type example is the enclosing type. I simply use the term parent type. But that's my own, English language. The phrase for programmers are enclosing type. So what is Unity saying is that, hey, you have an enclosing type and you see that it's enclosing because, this whole section starts from a curly brace, and you see that whenever I select this guy, it will highlight, whenever I put my mouse inside here, I'm not sure the video encoding would let you see, but I have a blue line here and blue highlight here, okay? And if I move my mouse here, you see that it shows me the start of this guy. So it's an enclosing. By the way, you see that, okay, I can close these guys to get it much more readable. But you see that there is this big line, and you see that now color coding is highlighting everything for me inside that. And you see that it's a closed section. For example, this is another closed section. But that's a plugin that I'm using for enclosing the comments. But in this case, this is an enclosed type. So this is the enclosing type on top. Okay, and if I expand it, I see a member of it that has the same name with the enclosing type, and that is why I would get this yelling. Okay, and if I use it, for example, inside awake, if I would say, for example, var, var ble equals to new type example, and you see that it says, okay, now I have global type example, because remember, everything without namespace is sitting inside global. Or I can say type example dot type example. Okay, and you see that it says, okay, yeah, an interface can't be used like this, but whatever, you see that I have a type and another type as a child of that type. Okay, so because they have the same name, I can't use it, and I would get more and more errors as it goes forward. Okay, so if you have a child, or I should now speak with proper language, if you have a member inside enclosing type, make sure that that member does not have the same name as its enclosing type. Okay? End of the discussion. So I hope this video helped you to understand what is the type and what is the member, and what can be a member and what can be a type. Remember, you can have types as members of another type. That is a bit confusing, but if you look at here, a type can have another type as its own member. Okay? So that was the purpose of this first video. In next video, we will start speaking about inheritance, polymorphism, and the difference between interface, structure, and class. And hopefully that would help you understand the concepts behind what people use in intermediate scripting. You know, you would see Nelson using all of these all the time, and you may get confused. Oh, well, what the hell is going on? Well, I promise at 3 or 4 more videos, at the end of them, you would get comfortable enough to understand what is going on when people are doing intermediate hardness scripting. Anyway, have fun, everyone. Bye-bye.